Hi guys, welcome to my channel Westy Travels. My name's Col, and today what we're going to do is we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of these two lightweight tents from two premium tent manufacturers. So on the left here we have the fabulous Hilleberg Akto tent, and on our right we have the Fjallraven ABISKO Lite 1 tent. So we'll cover what both tents look like, how they work, and we'll do a side-by-side comparison showing you the differences because they almost look very similar. They're the exact same style, but there is subtle differences that make a difference between both tents. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Okay guys, well first up let's have a look at both tents while they're still in their stuff sacks. So you can see on the right in the dark green tent we have the Hilleberg Akto tent, and on the left we've got the Fjallraven ABISKO Lite 1 tent. So you can see straight off difference wise the Fjallraven tent is a lot more compact in its bag than the Hilleberg. To be fair to the Hilleberg, you can see once I roll it out there's a little bit more room for stuffing it away if the weather's bad, so that's a kind of bonus to the Hilleberg tent. With the Fjallraven 1, you've got compression straps on the sides, and it also opens at the top here, so there's plenty of room to get your tent even when it's wet, and it's not a case of you're fighting the bag. It's still very easy to put both tents away. Your one advantage the Fjallraven has over the Hilleberg tent is if you're getting to your campsite after a long day trekking, what you've got to do with this is take it out, and you're having to unroll the whole tent to get to your tent poles. You then have to put them together and then you can put your tent up. The advantage with the Fjallraven one is the pole is kept external to the actual tent body, so you can just unclip it there, undo your two compression straps, and you've got all your poles there ready to go, which allows you then to build them and they're ready to go once you pull the tent out, which means the tent isn't blowing about and it isn't getting soaking wet before you're ready to put it up. So that's definitely an advantage to the Fjallraven tent over the Hilleberg Akto tent. So one of the most important factors if you're out in the trail and you're planning a long day's hiking or a week's hiking with the trail is weights of the tent. So they're very similar. There's hardly any difference between them. On my right in the sand colour is the Fjallraven ABISKO Lite 1, and it comes in at 1.65 kilograms. And to my left, very similar, is the Hilleberg Akto, and it's coming in at 1.7 kilograms. So hardly any difference at all with it. So another important factor when you're choosing one of these two tents, especially if you're of the taller variety, is length of the tent internally. So on this case, the ABISKO Lite wins because it's 240 centimetres and the Hilleberg is 220 centimetres. Next important factor you're after is the internal height of both tents. So they are slightly different in this case. The Fjallraven tent, its internal height is 90 centimetres and it runs down to both ends at 35 centimetres. Whereas you have slightly more room in the Hilleberg height-wise, you're 93 centimetres, but it is running down to 30 centimetres at both ends, so you're getting a bit more overall volume in this tent rather than the Hilleberg because it goes shallower, but you do have that 3 centimetres more, just, and that's literally right at the peak where the pole is on it. Next factor that's quite important is your internal width of both tents. So on the Fjallraven tent and the Hilleberg tent, you're at the widest point, which is where your pole is when you're first going in the door. They're both 90 centimetres. The advantage with the Fjallraven is where it goes in at both ends, it runs into 70 centimetres, where the Hilleberg's going down to 62 centimetres. So overall volume, you're getting slightly more internal space although you'd hardly notice the difference in the Fjallraven tent compared to the Hilleberg. You do have that 3 centimetres height gain, but it narrows in and slopes down that little bit further in the Hilleberg than it does. So height wise, internal space, everything, you're kind of looking at slightly more room if you're kind of taller to lie out in for the Fjallraven tent. But for sitting up wise in the middle, if you're getting changed, you've got slightly more room in the Hilleberg tent. So another difference between the two tents is when you first go to build the tents, they both have one centre pole, which on both tents are 9mm poles. So they're the exact same sort of size and sort of thickness. The one big difference on the two tents, with the Fjallraven ABISKO Lite tent, you actually get 4 small poles here that come into 2 pieces, and you have to put them together and slot them in here on basically all 4 corners and tension it. And the difference with the Hilleberg Akto tent is you have the poles pre-manufactured into the tent, so you're not having to actually put them in. So it's slightly quicker, this tent, to put up, but only marginally. The other poles just take a minute to put in and slot them in there, and they are that little bit thinner. So what happened if they get damaged, I'm not too sure, where you have a spare one of these poles, so you'd, on the Fjallraven tent, so you'd be able to change it out. So for quickness sake, the Hilleberg wins on that one, but personally I prefer the Fjallraven system, where you're putting the 4 sort of poles into the corner, and if you get any damage in them, you can use your spare to actually fix that problem, but this does save you speed. So on your outside material on the Fjallraven ABISKO tent, you have 2 different thicknesses of material. So on the main fabric itself, it's a 20D cell polyamide, and down at the bottom where you're touching the ground or there's more likely to be damage, that goes up to 40D, and it's the same with the floor inside with it. Now your material on the Akto tent is slightly different to the Fjallraven tent, and it's a material they call Kerlon 1200. Visually, the material seems slightly thicker than the Fjallraven. The Fjallraven almost looks see-through and appears thinner, but it's siliconized on both sides of the tent, and I've never had any problem with both of them. But if you were going into sturdiness, slightly, I think, and this isn't scientific, the Hilleberg kind of appears to be slightly more sturdy fabric-wise than the Fjallraven, although I've had it in some high winds and it performs fantastically. So both of them are obviously top-notch tents and perform really well in high winds because of the low profile material-wise. So guy lines on the Fjallraven tent, you have 2 guy lines coming off the centre pole. I've not set them up just because I've got the 2 tents side by side and I ran out of room. But you've got 2 main ones coming out from your poles, and on the Fjallraven at either end you have 3 separate guy lines coming. So 2 of them are pulling your corner sort of supports out, and then the centre one is actually pulling a little flap over the ventilation to keep the weather out. So you're having to set up 8 guy lines on this tent and hang them up, but they're very strong and easy to put up with it. Guy lines in your Hilleberg tent are slightly different. You've got the exact same, where you've got thicker guy lines than you do on the Hilleberg than you have on the Fjallraven tent there, although I think they're 160 kilogram brake strength in the Fjallraven's fully adjustable, so you're not going to have any problems there. Your difference is at the end of the tent, rather than having on the Fjallraven you've got 3 individual guy lines, you've just got the 2 guy lines that come in a W loop and are adjustable, so they're slightly quicker for hanking and back up again, and you're just using the 2 pegs for them, so slight difference there. Okay, next up is ventilation. So there's a slight difference between both tents on them. Both of them have this central hood above the door with net behind it, allowing permanent ventilation to come in there, but you've got the rain cover. But one of the big differences, and this is where the Fjallraven wins over the Hilleberg tent, is internal ventilation at either end. On the Hilleberg tent, you have to go outside and open the zip so that you've got ventilation coming from the inside. In the Fjallraven tent, you're able to do that internally, so you can open a zip fully and then open the outside zip so you're allowing an airflow, and then you can put the insect mesh back up, which is obviously a great advantage if it's pouring with rain. With the Hilleberg, you have to go outside and open that zip, but I'll just show you both of them just now. This is your Hilleberg Akto tent for ventilation at the end. You can see there's a half moon zip feature there to let ventilation in. So if we're in the middle of a storm, but it's still that muggy hot way, you're going to have to get out and open that, or you've got to leave it open when you first set your tent up. And if it gets chilly and you want to close it, you're having to get out your tent. We'll show you that from the inside. So this is your inside view of the Hilleberg, and you're seeing the end of the tent is just solid mesh here. So you have no ventilation coming in that way. You're only getting it coming from both ends once you have the zip. And as I mentioned, you have to go out the tent to be able to open and shut that. That's us now inside the Fjallraven tent, and you can see your difference here is we have a internal zip feature, and outside you've got the mesh, and you can open your outside zip and shut that zip for ventilation or for weather protection. So definitely an advantage for the Fjallraven tent, which is a major feature, is you can shut that off and open it easy enough. So let's look at a few of the features in the Fjallraven ABISKO tent that the Hilleberg tent doesn't have or are slightly different. So first up, internally in the ABISKO Lite tent, is on the top of the tent in the centre, you have an adjustable drying line. You have a ventilation net up to the side there. And internally on the ABISKO tent, you have two pockets. So you have one just to the side of the door, and then you have a second one that's a double pocket just on the far side of the tent. As mentioned before, both ends, you've got the ventilation zips there as well. And then for the ventilation on the outside door, you can open it fully with the zip, and then you can unzip it and you've got the insect net, and you can also fold back the zip there. Another feature you have on the Fjallraven tent is if you're cooking in the porch area, you're able to unzip the door, and you have a toggle here which then feeds into a little loop on the door, and then you can pull your zip in, and that gives you the feature where your door's half closed and you've got plenty of ventilation coming through, and you can cook whether you're using meths or gas. So that's a great feature. Internal door wise, you have a double zip feature that moves fully round to allow you to fully open it, and you have a secondary zip that allows you to fully open the thicker material and just have the inside insect net for ventilation. And both doors can be held back with the Fjallraven toggle system. So excellent door system. One of your nice features on the Fjallraven tent is whether you're inside or outside and you have to roll the door up, it's a lovely toggle and loop system with it, where you're just pressing the toggle in, pulling it tight, and pulling that in, and then you have the double one that allows you to pull that in there, so you can see your door is well out the way and it's not impeding your entrance to the tent. And this is the main reason I would choose the Fjallraven tent over the Hilleberg. I'll take you over to the Hilleberg just now and show you how annoying their door system is, and there is the possibility that it's me doing it wrong. So let's have a look at that. So on the Hilleberg Akto, we open the door and it comes in, and your difference here is there's one toggle and loop system there. So when you fold it up and you're rolling it in, you really have to get it nice and tight. And what I find happens is you take your toggle, and it's rather than an adjustable strap, it's just an elasticated loop on that. And I find that this door, if there's any wind, you can see it often just unravels, and then you're getting water in the tent and you're having to redo it. So the minute there's any wind or you don't get it tight enough, it's a real bugbear. Anytime I've used the Akto, it's really put me off, and you're trying to cook and the door gets blown open with the wind. Now obviously you've got the option of, rather than rolling it out the way, you can roll it tightly in the way, but the exact same thing happens. You look there and it just wants to drop down with it. So let's go inside the Akto and we'll show you the differences inside compared to the Fjallraven before this rain hits me heavy. So looking at your Akto at the door, you have the zip feature, which is quite good. So rather than you be able to fold the door up and leave it half open, on this you're just opening the ventilation flap and putting your zip down for ventilation on it. So you can keep the rain out and still get some ventilation coming in. Inside, to the left of the door, you've got one pocket there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there's no ventilation at the sides. And you have no drying line at the top here, but you do have a series of little loops in there. So there would be the possibility that you could put a little bit of cord in there for a drying line yourself. Door wise, it's your half moon door, and on this one it's just the one zip system. But what you do have is you have a velcro flap for an insect net, so you're only able to open a small section for the insect net, and then to do it back up you're just putting the velcro up, and then it's your one set of zips to open it, and you can roll them back. It's quite a wide door there, and there's a loop there to tie it back. So guys, that's a very quick side to side comparison between the Hilleberg and Fjallraven tents in between rainstorms. So coming to the crunch, I think it's pretty obvious from when I was talking about the features of both tents. 100% if I was to buy one of these tents, it would be the Fjallraven ABISKO Lite 1 tent. The reason being, number one, in the UK just now, the Hilleberg Akto tent is about £710, where you can pick up the Fjallraven tent for about £540. So number one, you've got a money saving thing there. This tent's slightly lighter. Feature wise, it wins the race hands down. The fact that you don't have to get out your tent to open the ventilation flap, you can open it and shut it totally from the inside, whereas during a rainstorm, if you want to shut that, you're having to get out to shut it and open it again because you have no internal access. With this one you can. You've also got the drying line that comes with it that's adjustable, whereas in the Hilleberg tent you have to sort of put your own cordage in. You've got the two pockets in this tent where you've just got the one on it, and I just feel features wise, especially the door is the biggest annoying thing on the Hilleberg tent. No matter how careful you're doing it, I've found that the minute you're doing it and you start cooking, and if it's wet and it's really windy and the fabric gets wet, it's very easy for that door to drop down. Whereas you can open and shut that door very easy in the Fjallraven tent. You've got the two loops which are adjustable rather than elasticated, so there's plenty of room to get them in and out with one hand. And the fact that you can also lift that door and keep it in the half closed position to cook in when it's raining outside, it's a no-brainer. The Fjallraven tent wins hands down. So thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed it, if you can, as usual, give me the little like and subscribe. And from Westy Travels, we'll catch you in the next adventure. Toodaloo.